been told that ever since 1946, when Churchill coined the term Iron Curtain. The glow of wartime warmth toward our Soviet ally faded fast. We were sold the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan with the argument that without them, Soviet troops might march through all of Europe, even though we had a monopoly on the bomb and Russia was still a war-ravaged land with more reason to worry than we. Stalin fed our phobias by rejecting our offer of economic help as financial aggression, by quickly condemning the idea for mutual control of the atom, by making Eastern Europe a communist prison camp. Now, in 1949, all of China fell to the communist forces of Mao Zedong. We saw red almost everywhere. And the Russians, the technologically backward, primitive Russians, got the bomb. We leaped from what we knew to what we dreaded to think. Somehow, somewhere, possibly right here at home, we were being betrayed. Insistent questions resounded in Washington. Who helped the Russians gain the secret of the A-bomb? Who lost China to the communists? Suspicions fell on fertile ground. There had been concern about communist spies even before the war. Now we learned in 1946 of a big Soviet espionage ring in Canada with possible links in the U.S. So Washington launched a wide hunt for security risks in government. The litany of people attesting to their loyalty became as familiar as once had been the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I am not and never have been a communist. I am not and never have been a fellow traveler. I am not and never have been a supporter of, a member of, or a sympathizer with any organization known to me to be or suspected by me of being controlled or dominated by communists.
Not only bureaucrats had to stand the test, so did movie stars. Some were glad to do it, even eager.
I have seen things that I thought were against what I consider good Americanism, in my feeling, and I have seen it in, I've seen pictures I thought shouldn't have been made. It shouldn't have been made, let me put it that way.
Why Hollywood? Because the Communist Party in America had indeed seen in movies a glamorous way to promote political ideas. During the war, it had been patriotic to make movies extolling our ally, Russia. No more. With Moscow now our nemesis, anti-communist congressmen found that red hunting in movie land guaranteed them Klieg-like publicity. Conformity became the best defense, a refuge of smooth similarity. I Am an American Day and Loyalty Day became the high holy days of this anxious time. And at the head of the parade appeared this man, Joseph R. McCarthy, the junior senator from Wisconsin. Looking for an issue that would get him reelected, he seized on the fears of millions and launched the squalid campaign that became known as McCarthyism. Its tactic, reckless and undocumented accusations against government employees.
Mr. Chairman, today this man, John S. Service, is a ranking officer in the policy-making group of untouchables on duty in Calcutta, India, one of the most strategically important listening posts in the world today. He was not an acceptable risk under Mr. Atchison's own yardstick of loyalty the day he entered the government.
Intimidation bred audacity, and audacity fed upon itself. McCarthy soon had the celebrity he sought. The stage was his alone to command.
You're not fooling anyone. I have offered to go before any committee, do anything you ask. If I can just get you to come down here and take the oath so we can get the answers to some questions. You're not fooling anyone at all, Senator. I'm sure of that.
Some victims understood his methods well enough.
The technique used by the senator in making these charges is apparently typical. He first announced at a press conference that he had discovered the top Russian espionage agent in the United States. At this time, he withheld my name. But later, after the drama of his announcement was intensified by delay, he whispered my name to a group of newspaper men with full knowledge that it would be bandied about by rumor and gossip and eventually published. I say to you that this was unworthy of a senator or an American.
But with his innuendos and lies and bully boy deceits, Joseph McCarthy pushed the boundaries of fair play too far and was finally destroyed by his own excess.
At this moment, Senator, I think I never really gauged your cruelty or your recklessness. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
The Senate and the national audience had also had their fill. Within months, McCarthy was formally condemned by his colleagues. His 4 years of influence were over. How had this inquisition gone on for so long? Why didn't more people stand up sooner? Well, after 4 years of total war against fascism, we found it hard to come down from the patriotic high of a righteous cause. We saw communist police states that reminded us of the ugly totalitarian powers of the 30s, and real communist spies turned up among our allies. Our leaders made the most of these combustible materials. To embolden us for our New World role, they created an official case of the jitters from just about every quarter, from churches, industrialists, unions, schools, the press, and the military. We were bombarded with a hate the enemy campaign rare for peacetime. The Attorney General's list of subversive organizations made it open season on scapegoats. And the fear got out of control. It created an irrational craving for the safety of conformity, a stampede of patriotic fervor. A lot of things got trampled: careers, lives, good judgment. It became easy to win votes with charges of conspiracy and hard to fight back, especially when the air was thick with suspicion. Things weren't going in the world the way we wanted them to go. We couldn't even win a little war in Korea. It wasn't supposed to be called a war. The proper name was the United Nations Police Action. Tell that to the men who fought there, most of them Americans. Communist North Korea started it, pouring troops into South Korea in June of 1950 and raising fears in Washington that a Russian-Chinese axis was trying to repeat in Asia what Moscow had accomplished in Eastern Europe. The South Koreans were quickly backed into a corner of their peninsula and on the verge of defeat when the Americans arrived under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. Only a fluke got Americans there at all. Russia was in the midst of a tantrum at the United Nations and boycotted the very session where the vote was taken to send a mutual security force to help South Korea. So the Russians lost the chance to veto the decision, and Harry Truman was able to dispatch American troops under the UN umbrella without even consulting Congress. There wasn't at first much opposition at home. Most of us thought the line had to be drawn in Asia as it had been drawn in Europe, or else the communists would keep testing their luck. At first, all went well. MacArthur launched a brilliant amphibious attack behind the North Korean border, cutting the communist forces in half and taking almost all of North Korea. So much of it, in fact, that UN units were able to approach the border between Korea and Communist China. There were warning signals from the Chinese, signals that were ignored. Suddenly, hundreds of thousands of Chinese troops hurdled the border and came slashing down on the Americans. Now, we were trapped, and our troops had to fight their way out in the bitterest of winter cold to be evacuated back to South Korea. With the snow, melted hopes of quick victory. This was the second war in 5 years for some of these men. They were sick of violence, mud, and GI rations, sick of being away from home. Their folks back home lost enthusiasm too. All those cries in 45 of peace, peace, and where was it? There wasn't even victory, just stalemate. When it was all over, the truce line was very near the original borders violated by the communists in 1950.